Good morning, good evening, everyone. Good evening in Romania, good morning in US, good afternoon in US as well, and welcome. I'm Mihaela Campion, the president of Archer, and I have the pleasure to welcome you and our guests today to this special event from hidden manuscript to publication, book discussion about Mihaela Miroiu's novel, Stories About Cadmav. This event is organized by Archer, American Romanian Coalition for Human and Equal Rights, and the Program for Romanian Studies at Indiana University. I would like to say a few words about Archer. This is an organization which mission is to empower the members of the diaspora to become active supporters and advocates of social justice and human rights in our communities. Our vision is to create a diaspora community that recognizes and includes all historically marginalized groups, regardless of their racial, ethnic, gender, and sexual identity. I have to tell you, I'm really excited for today's event. We have a stellar panel, and we welcome for the second time to an Archer event, Mihaela Miroiu and Maria Bucur, along with Bogdan Lefter, Radu Vancu, and Roxana Cazan, who is our executive director. I'm excited to introduce Maria Bucur, who is going to moderate the conversation today, and who will also introduce the author and the guest speakers. Maria is the John V. Hill Professor of History and Gender Studies at Indiana University. She's the author of 6 books and over 40 articles on the recent history of Romania and gender relations. Welcome all. A few words about how we are going to conduct this event today. Maria will continue from here on to introduce the author and the guest speakers, and she will also moderate the discussion. And I would like to invite everyone who is watching us live to participate in the conversation by asking questions and making comments in the comment section of this live event. I will also post information about everyone, so you will get to know our guest speakers and you will be more familiar with their exquisite work. And for those who are not going to participate live with us today, this event is going to be recorded and it will be posted on our page and YouTube page, so you can listen to it at your convenient time and make comments at that time as well. So I'm going to conclude this introduction, and Maria, please continue with introducing our guests today.
Mihaela, thank you so much, and thank you for welcoming us again to your generous organization. It's a real pleasure to work with you on these kinds of special meetings between people who live across the ocean in different time zones and different worlds, but still in the same world, especially today. It's my distinguished honor and a real pleasure to spend this time with you and with this group of individuals with whom I share bonds of professional respect, great admiration, and friendship. Our focus today is on a major personality of post-communist Romania, Mihaela Miroiu. Known until a few years back, primarily for her extraordinary contributions to feminist studies in Romania. I'm just going to do this little bit of, this is a small part of what she's written. It would take all day to read her CV, I'm serious. Professor Miroiu worked at the National School for Political Science and Public Administration until a few months ago, when she retired to pursue life and her love for the communities and people near and dear to her. As she reassured me the other day, she continues to be quite busy. So retirement is really a relative term. I think we're talking about deinstitutionalization rather than retirement. A leader and a builder of schools, Mihaela Miroiu has also been a writer for a long time. Those who read her essays in the press starting the 1990s knew her talents already back then. Her 2005 effervescent volume, co-authored with Mircea Miclea, Restul și Vestul, The Rest and the West, rendered even more visible Miroiu's verb as a writer, her talents as a storyteller and a wordsmith. With the 2017 volume, Cu mintea mea de femeie, With My Woman's Mind, she carved out a clearer niche as a feminist storyteller and won a well-deserved prize from the Union of Romanian Writers. Today, we are discussing Mihaela Miroiu's recently published novel, and I'm going to do a share here so that you can see what it looks like. All right, I'm going to leave this up here for just a moment. For those of you who are able to order online, this is your opportunity, and I'll put it up again a bit later on. Stories about Cadmav. You can see this here, and we'll shortly hear from the author read a selection from this novel. I want to begin our event by setting the stage for the audience through a few questions for Mihaela, our writer. I think that we can better appreciate the intentions of the author at the time of her crafting the novel by having a better sense of what framed that process. So Mihaela, I have some questions for you that I hope you'll entertain, and then we will hear from you reading. So you describe in your introduction to the novel that you wrote it by waking up at 5 a.m. every morning. Was this process of writing the novel an escape for you? We need you to have your microphone on.
Okay, sorry, my mistake. It was an escape in a way, but not an unusual one, because you know, I thought that we were living a meaningless life from many respects, because we were trapped in a sad story of people wearing aborted wings with a very little public liberty, almost none, and too little public creativity. So the possibility to express ourselves in a creative manner, it was censored. In the same time, as you know, my initial formation was philosophy. And to write and publish honest philosophy, my field, it was impossible apart from logic or philosophy of science. So I am speaking now about the philosophers who were not at all, you know, willing to support the dictatorship. And they thought that it's better for them to be philosophers, even if they are philosophers, they were philosophers in silence, apart from, as I told you, epistemology and logic. To write honest literature was also almost impossible unless you are able to use metaphors instead of truth. And even so, it was hard and risky to publish. But without expressing your thoughts and ideas, one life can be meaningless. I thought so. Around me, all my friends were also trapped in the same kind of life. And I thought that I must express them and us, their deep feelings, their hopes facing the wall of impossibilities. This is how Cadmav, an acronym made of their names, was born and raised day by day for about 3 years, between 85 and 88. So my problem was to give a meaning to our life, to our feelings, to our thoughts. And this was just for our small circle, which we name at the time being Cârmâr, for the Romanian speakers, they know that this is a sort of interjection expressing a sort of contesting in a rather useless way, something. So I was a part of this Cârmăr group, which in fact became, after 90, the nest of feminism, the newborn feminist after 89. And Bogdan Lefter wrote it already about it. Then the revolution came, and 3 afters, it was a possibility to publish, but I leave you, Maria, the room for other questions you have. Maybe they are focused on other things that I am thinking about.
Thanks for setting the stage in this very both intimate and kind of politically relevant context. I want to come back to you in the moment of your writing, because I want our audience to think about process, right? So this might sound like a menial question, but when did you start this routine of waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to write? I asked because you and I have done some oral histories together that asked women to talk about their daily routines. And
I know
what those routines said to us about the communist period was that they basically, if they had time at about 10:30 at night after they finished everything else they were doing for other people, they might read something. Of course, these were not writers. So to me, the question is sort of, when did you start the routine and how were you able to, in fact, carve out so much time for yourself?
I am an early bird person, and this was a routine since I was a teenager. So it was nothing new. In the evenings, I'm not able to focus to something creative at all. So I am a good listener. I can be a good reader, but in fact, in order to focus as in a creative work, I have to wake up at 4:30 to have my coffee and then to start thinking, sometimes writing. So this was for 2 years between 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock, apart from Sundays. And it was because during this time of the day, I felt alone on the planet. So it was nobody around. I was not teacher at that moment. I was not, an acting mother or acting wife, an acting teacher. It was my own time. So this was why I kept this time for myself. So I had a time of my own, not a room of my own. It's true. Microphone,
yes,
please.
Yes. You carved out this bit of time as a way to obviously nurture yourself in a way that nothing else could. And that implies to me that there was also a dearth of that sort of food for your soul and your mind as a writer and as a thinker. Am I correct in assuming that?
When someone is writing or is writing mainly literature, in fact, this person is colonized by the topic, by the character. So even if the writing process was from 5 to 7 in the morning, Cadmav has many characters, and as itself, because it's difficult to call Cadmav himself. In fact, it's itself. It was everywhere. When I walk on the underground, on the stairs of a bus or something like that, all the time when I was not a teacher or I had no conversations with people, I was in a way, and this is why I'm calling it a state of grace, because you are possessed by your own characters and they are with you all the time. So it was a totally special time, not just the 2 hours a day. So I have seen Cadmav everywhere.
Oh, and I hope everybody else does after they read the book, because it's hard to get your head out of it afterwards. What were you reading when you're writing this? What other voices were you listening to when you were crafting your own?
Apart from philosophy, because this was, you know, the main interest. In our circle, Cârmâr, we had a topic every week. So we were reading together the same book. It could be philosophy or literature, and we were discussing it. So this was a common reading. But in the same time, it was a time when we were fascinated about Latin American literature, about our own writers, the new generation, obzeciști, which were really very gifted. But I think I felt very attracted to the Latino Americans because they were also talking or writing about dictatorship and how to live like a human being in spite of the dictatorship. So this was fascinating for me. Maria, microphone.
Yes, I know.
Sorry.
Sometimes my microphone doesn't.
You can keep it open.
Okay. All right. So I would like to switch now to your voice as an author. We have in our head a little bit of a framework for how to hear your voice. I'm going to share my screen as a way to let the non-Romanian speakers understand what you are reading. Let me just pull that up. And once I do that, Mihaela, I hope this is visible to everybody. Is it big enough?
It's visible.
Oops. Okay.
Okay.
The floor is yours.
De ce m-ai lăsat să plec de lângă tine? Așa, ca să ai de unde te întoarce. Chiar crezi că m-am întors? Ei, tu semeni cometei Halley. Mai treci din când în când, mai ales în vremurile tale tulburi. Atunci știi că sunt la o cumpănă, nu-i așa? Irma o prinse de braț, făcând-o să se așeze pe trunchiul salcâmului prăvălit lângă alee. Știu. Ba chiar presupun că trece un cal verde pe pereți în așa un galop, că tropăiturile lui ți se citesc în pupile. Se vede tare? Râse din nou, ca de o glumă veche liniștitor de cunoscută. Strident de-a dreptul. Are vreun nume calul ăsta al meu? Ce crezi? Are, cum să n-aibă? Are numele lui de când e lumea lume, zburător se cheamă. De ce simplifici lucrurile, Irma? Nu-i chiar așa, să știi, nu-i deloc. Ți-am spus că Marius scrie ceva despre un personaj pe care nu l-am găsit. Poate mi-e și frică să-l găsesc, fiindcă îl caut de când mă știu. Ce are asta cu zburătorii pe care mi-i pui în cârcă? Tare-ți mai place să te minți. Eu nu neg că ai fi în stare să te îndrăgostești, chiar și de o ființă născocită. Însă neg că ai putea să nu o faci. Asta e tot. Nu ești în stare să crezi, nici măcar să înțelegi, dacă nu iubești. La tine lucrurile astea au fost amestecate de când te știu. Dar ce, eu nu pot avea un crez construit rațional? Câtuși de puțin, ba chiar pariez că te zgâiești prin toate locurile să vezi dacă nu-ți iese în cale unul în pantaloni care să semene cu personajul acela sau să-ți închipui tu că seamănă. Asta-i. Îl mai și așezi și fatalmente în pantaloni. Personajul poate foarte bine să fie femeie. Ce-ți veni că aș căuta neapărat un bărbat? Iar te minți. Tu continui să-ți cauți perechea întregitoare sau măcar fantoma ei și încurci planurile. Ori le dai altă semnificație. Și atunci, Marius, Catinca, față de cine încerci să fii ipocrită? Marius n-a fost decât o gară, o sală de așteptare, așa cum sunt și eu. Dacă nu e și nu ești decât atât, de ce vă complăceți în statutul ăsta? Fiindcă ai nevoie de noi ca să-ți limpezești calea, ca să știi și tu ce cauți la capătul drumului. Și voi, ce faceți voi? Îmi stați așa în cale? Îmi ațineți drumul? Te înșeli. În relația cu tine, noi îți suntem drumul. Mă rog, nu știu cât de împăcat e Marius cu asta, dar în ce mă privește, Catinca îi strânse mâinile, cuibărindu-se mai tare spre umărul ei. Oare de ce nu mi-ajunge Irma? Ce tot caut eu umblând ca bezmetica? Dacă m-aș opri așa, aș încremeni lângă ea de tot, cu ce m-ar neferici asta?
Mulțumesc, Mihaela. Thank you. I almost started again in Romanian. Tell us why you picked this fragment.
I think this fragment is relevant for who is Catinca in searching for an embedded principle. So Catinca is, you know, in a way the kind of, let's say, a woman tempted by philosophy, but not for a disembodied philosophy. And this is why she was starving for someone who is, you know, more than a principle, an abstraction. In fact, in a way or in another, this was my way of doing philosophy even later. Yes.
Yeah. So when we had a conversation about the novel, after I read the manuscript, this is in early 2020, pre-COVID, or just around the corner from COVID, you said to me, I was not a feminist when I wrote this. You said that. And
no,
yet,
I was not.
Right.
I was not aware of it.
Right. But at the same time, as you read this fragment, you know, there's this moment where you draw attention to like essentialist assumptions about, you know, someone in pants. What made you put that in there? What, if you can remember, what was the intent of like drawing attention to that sort of assumption?
No, in fact, Irma was rather closer to what I intended to be than Catinca, that's for sure. So Irma had guts and she confronted the system. So she was, let's say, the pragmatical side of this kind of woman. So it is not just about one woman or not just about the face of a woman. Of course, my inspirer was, as usual, somebody from my own life. It was my friend, since we were students, Sanda. She was like that. But she was not so pragmatical as this one. In fact, it's this sort of friendship when you don't know precisely who is who. She is you, you are her, everybody is everybody, and so on and so forth. So it's difficult. We are puzzled. We have puzzle personalities, in fact. So we can recognize ourselves in the others.
Thank you, Mihaela. This is a lovely beginning for our panel conversation, and I hope I've incited interest and curiosity in our audience so that they would continue to read the novel on their own. But for now, we're going to turn to our three panelists, and we are going to hear first from Bogdan Lefter, who was a renowned Romanian writer, literary critic, and political analyst. He's a professor of Romanian literature at the University of Bucharest and serves as the editorial director of the literary magazine Altitudini. He served as director of the Observator Cultural, the chief editor of the literary journal Contrapunct. Both are very famous publications in Romania, and a political analyst at Radio Free Europe. A former member of Cenacul de Luni and Junimea, Lefter is the author of 2 poetry collections, a book of fiction, and hundreds of scholarly articles, essays, and books. Some of his most notable books include Guide to Romanian Literature, Novels, Experiment, and the Post-Communist Book Industry. And I could go on. There's quite a lot to quote here. He's a member of the Union of Romanian Writers and helped found the Association of Professional Writers in Romania. He's a president of that association, and the Association for General Literature and Comparative Literature in Romania. Bogdan, you have the floor.
Just 1 second, Maria, it is very important.
Please.
He wrote the afterword of my book.
But of course.
Yes, in the same time, he was and is the best ally for Romanian feminism. We had in all our time, in all the 30 years which passed from the very beginning of it, of re-beginning of it. So all my gratitude for Bogdan, who is really a marvelous literary critic and a marvelous friend.
Thank you for this wonderful, add-on. I absolutely am grateful for that. Bogdan, we are eager to hear from you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for these wonderful introductions. I should probably skip saying anything. It's enough. You just praised me so wonderfully. Or the other way to put it, I should now deliver such an extraordinary speech in order to confirm what you just said. And that's probably is not possible at all. First of all, thank you for your invitation, and it's a great pleasure to be together here during this meeting in honor of Mihaela Miroiu, a wonderful person, a wonderful author, a wonderful friend. Again, thanks for the introduction. As I am concerned, some details should be probably a little bit amended. For instance, I didn't publish 2 collections of poetry. The second or the first of the 2, the former was a collective volume with 4 other colleagues. I just contributed to a book of fiction with just 2 short stories, so I didn't publish myself a book of fiction, as here we are, Mihaela did, even decades after. So thank you. I chose to write when Mihaela Miroiu asked me to write a few words as a foreword originally to her novel. I decided to draw a broader portrait, and as you probably know, maybe some of the people watching this also, I wrote a long essay, description and analysis of the book and of the author and of her career and of the whole symbolism of her life. Be it so, I asked Mihaela to put it at the end, not to direct the whole, to guideline the whole reading of the novel, just have it in the end as a sort of a conclusion. Her own introductory notes are opening the novel in a sort of an ouverture as at the opera houses. Of course, I can say a lot of things about the book I read and about a book which about which I already wrote tens of pages. I should probably just a little bit summarize the general situation we are now together in and the whole background of the writing of this book. It is a very unusual book. It is a sort of a literary debut when the author is retiring from university as a teacher, as a professor. Yes, Mihaela Miroiu did write some other texts which are more or less literary. You, Maria, you mentioned the book written together with Mircea Miclea, which is in fact an exchange of letters. So also personal writings, a dialogue, Bucharest, Cluj, between friends who decided to write to each other more than just a few words, just short messages, but develop their own ideas and provoke a duel, which resulted in a wonderful book. Mihaela Miroiu also wrote and published a few years ago a book of memoirs. She wrote, yes, she published this, Cu mintea mea de femeie, with my mind of a woman, if I may translate the title as such. So she's not an unknown person to the literary milieu in Romania and elsewhere. The core of her activity, her extraordinary and extensive work as a feminist philosopher, as a theorist, also an organizer of groups, an organizer of a university department. She has started teaching feminist theories in universities in Romania. She has guided PhD theses and other writings of students in this respect. So, and she authored herself an important number of books as a philosopher and theorist and ideologist of gender studies, feminism, and so on. So she, with this part of her activity, of course, she has been all this time since 1990 or 94-5, when she started producing as an author articles and books in this respect. She has been known to the literary milieu, to the cultural Romanian world in general, for, as we all know, we use theories, and we are, myself, Radu Vancu here, and others, we are specialized in literature. We maybe are writers or teach literature, but we are also looking here and there to political sciences, history, philosophy, and all the humanities which provide us methodologies, concepts, ideas, and the general background for literature, for the history of literature. Beside this, as I mentioned before, Mihaela Miroiu has started proving that she is a gifted literary author before this novel. Stories with Cadmav jumped anyway, sort of out of nowhere, as a book written in the 1980s. So when Mihaela was 30-something. And of course, this is something which needed reflection, needs reflection, and we should all read the book thinking about how the book was written. So your questions, Maria, were well targeted. Why 5 to 7? What did you think writing the book? And I think there are more and more things to add to that. For Mihaela Miroiu was at the time, has been ever since, is today, but maybe not these minutes and an hour or two. I don't know exactly how long we will be together. During an internet session, she is, and in English, she is a little bit self-restricted. She has spoken elegantly and profoundly, but with, I dare say, and please forgive me, Mihaela, with considerably less wit than she has always been, and she is in everyday life, and also as a professor, as a public intellectual. She is, when at ease in Romanian, for instance, maybe in other languages as well, she's a very effervescent speaker. She's using a wide range of words. She's always switching between levels of language. She is mixing in the same sentence very highly intellectual terms and very common phrases. She doesn't avoid some which may come from slang or from other, well, lowbrow ranges of the language of communication. She's always ironical. She uses lots of word games. She's paraphrasing all the time things which her dialogue partners immediately recognize. She's making cultural allusions and so on and so forth in a very quickly rhythmed discourse. She has been as such because she is as such. She has always been as such, and she's. I would now translate myself what I'm saying. She's a very literarily talented, gifted person. She is very gifted, which you immediately notice when just listening to the way she's speaking. But a graduate of philosophy. In communist Romania, 1 year maybe before or two before 1980, which is 1980 and 81, the threshold was the threshold toward the last decade of the communist regime and the decade of the final crisis, as the Romanian society under the communist dictatorship underwent during the 1980s severe lacks of food and energy, electricity, heat in apartments, and so on and so forth. I try to imagine, and I wrote that down in the afterword of this wonderful novel of hers, what probably might have thought, felt, experienced a young woman in her early 30s under a communist dictatorship which was falling apart but still strong and looking very authoritarian and very repressive, having to teach what she has loved and studied, philosophy, which in those times, during those times, meant the obligation to teach Marxist philosophy and follow official guidelines. Therefore, forced to restrict herself, forced to block all this creativity which was in herself, which was her own nature. And I just assumed that writing a novel at that time was sort of a compensation to all this. And I think indeed that might be confirmed and even studied. It should maybe be studied the way intellectuals in Romania and maybe in other Central European countries under communist during those times, maybe also in the Soviet Union, in Russia, elsewhere, intellectuals who did not have a literary profile by graduation, who did not study literature as such, and therefore are not in a easy position to start writing literature, fiction, poetry, producing in this way fictional worlds for fictional refugees, did do that because we do know a number of intellectuals who studied other kinds of humanities than literature and the arts, even intellectuals who studied maybe maths or engineering and who chose, for instance, for the last category I just mentioned, in a very significant number, writing science fiction as engineers or exact sciences graduates were familiar with, say, robots, machines, machineries, and fiction with machineries, rockets and robots were close to what they felt as being repressed within themselves under a tough dictatorship. So we are now privileged to read this document of those times, a book written by a very sophisticated young author. The novel is remarkable in itself as well. It is not just, I don't know, a diary which is compensating what the real life, everyday life is offering or not offering to you. It is a complex architecture with interesting symbolism, with a parable which rises up page after page or sequence after sequence, with the complex characters, as resulted already from your previous talk. So I think it is a very illuminating reading what this complex, interesting, surprising novel is offering to us. I think that's enough just for an introduction. If the discussion needs the intervention of someone who joined the publication of the novel, I'll be back.
That was beautiful. And Mihaela Campion and I were in a kind of listening to you and thinking to what you're saying, hoping for some good Romanian language examples of what's happening in a novel in terms of the literariness of her writing. So maybe I'll do some digging to see if I can come up with some juicy examples. Bogdan, if you can think of a few, and if you have the book in front of you, maybe we can add a bit more to that. But I want to pass now the baton to Roxana Cazan, who is a writer and a co-editor of the anthology Voices on the Move, an anthology by and about refugees. Speaking of refugees, in this case, not fictional, but real refugees. A Romanian immigrant to the United States, Roxana Cazan's work has most recently been featured in Poets Reading the News, Flash's Switchgrass Poetry Review, Connecticut Review, River Review, Construction Magazine, Coal Creek Review, Hecton International, Watershed Review, and quite a few others that I couldn't keep going. Roxana is the author of a poetry book entitled The Accident of Birth, and the co-editor of Voices on the Move, as I said before. And Roxana was my student at Indiana University, I think about 10 years ago, Roxana. I was just thinking about it. I can't believe it, I know.
Thank you for the introduction. Actually, my second book of poems just came out, but I won't take the attention away from our author, Mihaela Miroiu. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited, especially because 3 of the people on the screen have been my professors, some more directly than others. Maria Bucur, directly my professor, but I formed my enthusiasm for literature because of the work of young Bogdan Lefter, and my attraction to neo-Marxist and Eastern European feminism because of Mihaela Miroiu and Maria Bucur's work. So I'm excited to be here. Radu, you live in the city of my love and of my birth, and you work at the university that I'll always miss. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much. I wanted to just pick up upon something Mihaela said earlier. She said, if I quote correctly, we can recognize ourselves in the others. Maybe if I can offer a revision of this, we must recognize ourselves in the others. And I say this because at the University of Oklahoma, I teach a diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging course. And I've been concerned for a while with the idea of the fact that we belong to each other and we depend on each other. And in that sense, I fell terribly in love with one of the characters in this novel in particular, and that is Irma. So I want to speak about this novel and maybe offer a little bit of a reading of it, if that's okay. Even though Povestiri despre Cadmav is a recovered earlier novel, when I picked up the book, I expected to discover traces of Miroiu's contemporary social and political commitment to feminism, just the way that I encountered it in graduate school through concepts like room service feminism. I considered Linda Hutchins' observation that even though postmodern, and I'm using the term very loosely, representations may be self-reflexive and often politically ambivalent, their receipt cannot avoid being political. When their stable identity and meaning is decentered or negated, the social justice and political commitments of postmodern fiction often become questionable. And while the coexistence of the novel's postmodern traits and its author's political commitment might seem contradictory at times, I hoped that they would converge, and I think they did. Although I'm not equipped to argue here that the novel is in its entirety is a feminist undertaking, the reading that I'd like to offer here is my own exercise in feminist literary interpretation. So for the purposes of this short intercourse, I define feminism as an intellectual commitment to a resistance against a male-coded monopoly of thought, narrative, and imagination. So I'd like to remark that the linguistic level of discourse in the novel reflects a gendered patriarchal approach to existence, which allows the novel to represent a world out of that which is already discursively familiar, considering the time that it was written. For instance, when the friends come over Katinka and Marius's apartment on Christmas Eve, the omniscient narrator explains that I failed to translate this piece, sorry. Femeile polemizau mai puțin, poate grație ispitei lor pentru o logică dialectică, a nevoie de a tranșa masculin între două valori de adevăr, mai ales că nu le se ducea pe niciuna formalizare a oscientismului în fel sau altul. Între ele trona răsfățat Paul, poetul grupului, singurul capabil să le satisfacă nevoia de lirism și de particular. So the discourse here parallels a kind of mimetic realism, according to which, and I'm quoting from Sherry Ortner, men are more objective and inclined to relate in terms of relatively abstract categories, while women more subjective and inclined to relate in terms of relatively concrete phenomena, albeit aspiring to objectivity. In her essay, Is Female to Male as Nature is to Culture, Sherry Ortner investigates this assumption and suggests that both social institutions and cultural conventions and representations must be changed in order for assumptions about women and femininity as weaker or less than to disappear. In the novel, representation is not free from the ideological preference of the system which it depicts from the manipulation of the socially dominant. Because of this logic, then, the formation of meaning and history, which is mediated by language in the novel, becomes a matter of construction, not reflection. The world is built with that which is immediately available. Following Ortner's logic, one may read in the novel a critique to the approach that women are closer to nature than to culture. This happens if one notes the opposing assumptions created by discourse in a language that is very gendered and a culture that favors patriarchal, with narrative action and storytelling. The novelist allows her female characters to transcend and transform things through the superimposition of abstract categories and transpersonal values. In a Derridian fashion, the author deconstructs this hierarchical binary of subject equals man and object equals woman by laying bare the involvement of power in the signifying process and the production of meaning. Irma deconstructs the dictionary, or what Jean-François Lyotard would call one of the ultimate meta-narratives, and transforms not only the neighborhoods by renaming streets and buildings, but by reinventing urban planning as a type of design constantly reimagined by those who live it. Katinka assumes a degree of narrative control over Marius's invention, Cadmav, who morphs into Nathaniel so that she can orchestrate his very presence, even though he's awarded free will. Another feminist argument one could make is that the novel also rejects patriarchal heteronormative grand narratives of the like, fiindcă nu te putem lua toate de bărbat, because we cannot all marry you, by developing a complicated and complex relationship between Katinka and Irma, who believes that the most valuable relationship between humans is friendship, because it could never be contained and thus altered by an institution. And so does Nathaniel. Miroiu problematizes this further, pondering the possibility of rearticulating language to reflect the limitlessness, eroticism, and ineffability of friendship and its impossibility to be captured by an institution by proposing the synonym sufleție, or soulship. Femeia asta, ea, Katinka, cu puseuri de adolescentă, era totuși singura ei iubire de cursă lungă sau de cursă definitivă. In English, this woman, she, this Katinka with her teenage flares, was really her only everlasting love. Another time, Irma tells Katinka, în relația cu tine, noi îți suntem drumul, which we already read from what was read today. So in our relationship with you, Marius and I are your thoroughfare. And I don't know how reconciled Marius is with this, but thus admitting her unconditional devotion. Although I secretly wished to see this relationship complicated further to the point where it could challenge the heteronormative structures of the language at that time, for the time frame in which the novel takes place, it certainly dislodges some assumptions about relationships, gender, and power. One other way through which the novel opposes the equivalation of women to nature is by reimagining female revenge, and read here hysteric revenge. Irma attempts to find Nathaniel and his workshop, but ends up on a construction site where she's raped. The scene is terrifying, the language cinematic, and the action dehumanizing. I'm going to read this scene both in Romanian and in English. It's going to be hard. Bărbatul o apucă tot mai flămând, tot mai animalic, fornăindu-l a poftă grotească în urechi, cu întreaga minte concentrată sub fermoarul pantalonilor, de acolo de unde îi venea și forța bestială, care întrecea puterea de gândire, de reprezentarea femeii încremenite în stupoare, într-o unire cumplită, fără răspuns, fără putere de reacție. Printre grohăieli, creatura icnea. The man grabbed her ravenously like an animal, snoring in her ear with grotesque lust, his entire brain power concentrated underneath his zipper in a place yielding his bestial force that await a woman's force of mind, the ability to depict her state of stunned stupor, caught in this terrific intercourse without any strength left to react in some way. The rapist is the head of the construction site, the master planner of urban development, and the creator of this space that empowers his bestiality. In order to seek revenge, this is what Irma will destroy, the space, its design. She's not seeking legal course of action, which, if this novel is set during communism, would have probably been impossible. She's not hoping to physically destroy the man. Rather, she's attacking his very narrative role. And the so-called revenge becomes a work of creation, a recreation, a redesign of space and of narrative outcome. Atunci se hotărâse să trateze un cartier printr-o trăsătură de caracter și să-i așeze toate numele definite potrivite cu acea trăsătură. Pofta de lucru o făcut să-i sprăvească într-o noapte un cartier întreg, înșirând litere verzi peste numere albe. In English, then she decided to deal with a given neighborhood based on an assigned moral trait and to rename streets and buildings using words that describe this trait. The desire to work helped her finish one entire neighborhood overnight, rewriting its names in green over the white numbers. Her plan messes up the workers' blueprints, their directions, and estranges construction materials to the point where the construction has to halt. Paint as a prime material disappears. Istoria botezurilor nocturne se răsfrângea iremediabil în aceeași haos de șantier, în camioane rătăcite și organizatori descumpăniți, în plăci de beton duse de la locurile unde se făceau finisaje și faianța adusă acolo unde nu erau decât fundații. The story of nocturnal baptisms flopped over the chaos of brown fields where trucks would get lost and supervisors defeated. Here, slabs of concrete would be taken to buildings where workers were putting in their finishing touch, and the tile to the sites where they were only starting to lay foundations. I do want to point out the way in which the novel takes issue against the oppressive idea of female hysteria as a woman's issue, described in clinical terms for 2 millennia as a genital disorder whose manifestations were thought to range from headaches and irritability to insomnia and severe cramping, or to hyperpromiscuity, psychological disorders, even cancer. During Irma's difficult process of redesigning urban planning and thus taken away from her rapist his novelistic purpose, she experiences insufferable cramps and lower backache. Dureri acute de mijloc, însoțite de fierbințeli, o prăbușeau sub spuza aceea de hârtii, țintuind o vreme lungă neputincioasă, plină de gânduri care îi colcăiau în minte, umpleau ca o mâzgă. Sharp lower back pain and hot flashes kept her pinned under that heap of files, unable to move, her mind simmering this slime of dark thoughts. But Irma's cramping is not a result of hysteria, but rather signifies Irma's labor and delivery of her project. These are the labor pains of a narrative and symbolic parturition. In other words, her femininity is not shackled by victimhood and destruction, but rather triumphant in one of the most powerful abilities of the female body. In an interview with Kristen Gotzi for the Women's Studies International Forum in 2010, Miroiu recounts a conversation between her college logics professor, who said about her that she was intelligent enough to type his work or even read and write abstracts for him. And Miroiu confesses it was exactly the subordinate and ancillary role, the only role that he believed women could have in relation to philosophy. And I felt really humiliated at the time. In fact, as a reaction, I became a feminist, an unaware feminist. I was really shocked and really felt like I wanted to symbolically kill those guys because they would not let me be what I knew I could be. This was the issue. I felt like they were transforming me into a bonsai tree to keep me and my women colleagues small and insignificant, end of quote. Miroiu's female characters also encounter this type of misogyny, and they flip it the bird. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you for allowing me to say this.
That was beautiful, Roxana. I feel like I wasted my time as a teacher. I take no credit.
I'm so sorry. I translated these portions without asking for permission or without consulting with you, Mihaela. I hope that I did it justice.
So you did it in a unbelievable way, and what can I say? I am deeply moved. I told you from the very beginning that I am a little bit nervous about this discussion, and the way you read it, it's incredible. Yeah, thank you.
So before we engage in further discussion, I need to introduce our last speaker. I also add that I think Roxana has provided us with some beautiful examples of some of the quality of Mihaela's writing that has this mix of very sophisticated and very different types of language all brought together in a vivid construction. So we are grateful for that as well, just because we can better understand what kind of writer we are in the presence of here. And speaking of writers, our last speaker today is Radu Vancu, who is a Romanian poet, scholar, translator. Since 2019, he is the president of PEN Romania. He works as professor at the Faculty of Letters and Arts at the Lucian Blaga University in Sibiu. And he's the editor-in-chief of Transylvania magazine. I should add that he did a very important job of collecting together work on gender studies for a special number, and I'm very grateful for his work in that capacity, because he brought attention to very interesting and important work being done by scholars in Romania on this issue. He's also the editor of Poesis International magazine and the national editor of the Romanian section for the Poetry International website. Starting in 2002, he published 8 books of poems, for which he's received a number of prizes, both national and international. His poetry has been translated in around 20 languages, either in anthologies, magazines, or as individual books. He also published a novel, Transparența. I highly recommend it for anybody who hasn't read it, and 2 volumes of his diary, which were awarded several prizes. He is an organizer of the International Poetry Festival in Sibiu, Poets in Transylvania since 2013. And I very much hope that one of these days I will be there to attend it in person. Radu, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. You have the floor, or screen, that is.
Thank you so much, Maria. I am the one who is grateful for your participation in that issue of Revista Transilvania dedicated to feminist studies, and as I am to Mihaela. But now, just a few words about her novel. I have been waiting to read it since Mihaela told me that she has rediscovered it almost by accident, and that she was rereading it herself. She told me that first she didn't have high expectations of it. She thought it was something like a youth writing, something which has to remain there. But then she told me, I think it was during a protest in Sibiu, she told me, I finished rereading my novel, and you know what? It still hangs on. It's still vivid. It speaks. It's contemporary, so to say. And then she gave me the book shortly afterwards, with a splendid afterword of Professor Lefter. And it was indeed a strong novel. It was not the novel of a debutante, of course. It was written as Professor Lefter and as Roxana has already said, and as you, Maria, have said. It's with a mastery of the lexical registries, of lexical layers, and so on, ranging so impressively wide, and it's a strong novel. So it suffices to say that. But then, while reading it, I saw that everything Katinka does, everything Marius does, everything their group does, Cârmâr, which I would translate as snarl, gnarl, in order to preserve in English the phonetic quality, so to say. Everything they do is an attempt to escape their present, to escape their I mean, this is one effect of dictatorships. They make present seem inexhaustible and eternal, and they erode the future. There is no sense of the future in totalitarianisms. It's not an observation of mine. Hannah Arendt has made it. Isaiah Berlin has made it, and also I have encountered it in Matei Călinescu's diary. Matei Călinescu writes in 2001 that in his diary called Towards Romania, he has an entry there saying that what he felt in communist Romania and in post-communist Romania was the erosion of the future. I read the novel when it was published, Matei Călinescu's novel, in 2016. 2 years afterwards in Berlin, I have heard Aleida Asman, the famous professor, saying that post-communism and post-totalitarianism is about the erosion of the future. Same words. And I was reminded this strong phrase while reading Mihaela's novel, because everything they do there is an attempt to invent a future for themselves, or to escape their present, to build their sense of the future, their sense that there are worlds, even if not this world, but there are worlds, there are possible worlds for which one is worth living. And Cadmav is the expression of the need of the future. He is the vehicle through which they can evade their own present. Katinka uses Cadmav as a vehicle of evasion, of escaping her totalitarian present. Marius does it, and the 5 stories also speak about this. And when I saw that everything happens around the what's it called, the workshop, that clockwork master workshop, how should I call it? I thought that this is also a very good metaphor of time, because time is frozen in totalitarianism, and they are trying to escape time, and that manuscript is preserved after the collapse of that workshop, is rediscovered, and it's a novel which literally escapes time. The manuscripts do not burn, Bulgakov famously said. Manuscripts do not die, even when they are buried inside of the workshop of a clock maker, clock repairer. And also, I think Cadmav is a very good expression of what Alexander Vat called the inner man. In Alexander Vat's dialogue with Czesław Miłosz, he said that the aim of communism, like the aim of any totalitarianism, is to destroy the inner man. It's the famous phrase of Vat, which is taken from Saint Augustine, but coming back. Cadmav is the inner man saved in a totalitarian regime. An inner man which can dream, which can travel through time, through spaces, which can go beyond the prison which every totalitarian regime was. So I think this is what Cadmav is, and the stories about Cadmav. They are all vehicles which build the future, which evade the present, which preserve and save the inner man. And I think this is the most attaching and most forceful trait of Mihaela's novel. It is a novel about freedom, about how one can escape when there is no escape, how the inner man survives when the outer men are killed. And it's a novel which I deeply admire, and I'm thankful to Mihaela for both writing it and then saving it from the files of her youth. Thank you, Mihaela.
You are welcome. You are welcome, Telemis. The things Maria didn't say about Radu is that he's an exemplary citizen and he is an exemplary friend. So my beloved friend Radu Vancu made my life here in Sibiu wonderful.
Thank you so much, Mihaela. I am the moved one now. And you know, beauty lies in the beholder, as one famously says.
Yes, sure, I know. We are talking about.
Valentine's Day was yesterday, but there's a lot of love in the room tonight. I think it's spilling into our conversation very much. It's love of words, and I love the kind of friendship that links. I would say all of us is a pretty special relationship. So we have heard from all the panelists, and I really would like to know if Mihaela has some responses. How would you like to engage with the readings that you've heard about? You signaled a little bit in Roxana's comments how much her reading moved you. You've had a bit of time to maybe reflect on it a little bit more, and obviously you listened to what Radu had to say. And so I want to turn it to you, Mihaela, and to ask whether you would like to further engage, ask questions, comment.
So I have a few comments, but in a way, this is what I was waiting for. How the others are living their experience with this novel. So in fact, doesn't matter so much how I was, I was constructing the characters and the story, but it mattered a lot. What is this story for the others? Because if it is not something which belongs to them, it's meaningless for them. So it's true, I'm impressed what Roxana said, because I never thought in her thoughts, in her terms. But I think she was thinking even better than me about what Irma did. So it's a sort of meta narrative about a character which became even more impressive in her reading. So really, she impressed me from this point of view. I want to say something for my friend Bogdan. Bogdan, it is true that from a formal point of view, we were forced to teach official philosophy. In fact, it was not exactly Marxist. But as far as I am aware, some of my former students during these 80s are listening to us, so I cannot lie about it. And believe me, when you were able to close the door of your classroom, you could create privacy, an intimate space. And because of that, for me, the official philosophy was nothing compared to Pico della Mirandola, compared to Kant, to Descartes, with Bacon, Wittgenstein, Sartre, Quine, etc., etc. So at least nobody was with me apart from my students. And while I was trying to be honest with them in terms of the meaning of a deep, proper, wonderful philosophy. So I was not frustrated from this point of view at all. I did what I liked to do. This is why I never published philosophy during that time, but I felt free to teach it. Yes, Radu had also some impressive comments, which are really, wonderful as interpretation. As time is frozen, or the inner man which is preserved through Cadmav as a character, as a story, and so on and so forth. So I'm impressed by all of you. And I never wish or dream to have readers like you. Thank you very much.
Let me, since I haven't really talked with you about the novel itself, and we did have that bit from Roxana where she's explaining Irma's action of repainting the town, right? In the image of her own ideas of kind of rebelling against her victimization and writing her own story, so to speak, right? Owning her own narrative. There are a few bits in the novel that rereading it, I found very powerful with regard to how they speak to the notion of freedom, right? There's a
Of,
point.
can you repeat? Sorry.
Freedom, the notion of
Freedom. Huh?
Yes, there is this passage where, right, Irma is going out at night and she's ready to start doing his business because it's now like her routine, what she does. And then she finds that there's other people there, and that she finds that this sort of initiative that she came up with is something that now has taken on a life of its own. To me, that of course immediately speaks to what anti-politics meant under communism, first of all, like as not an escape from, but an escape into creativity, an escape into the refusal to use the epistemological and the kind of political frameworks given, and turning small actions into something that have completely different meaning. This is really how one can imagine surviving communism creatively, or any dictatorship for that matter, right? The fact that different people start to assert different relationships with this process is the thing that was really interesting to me, because it speaks to the reading of novels too, right? Not just to the framework of the political regime. I mean, one way to think about the fact that there's a woman that, you know, wants to write one thing, and there's another guy that Irma meets up with, and they're gonna go and, you know, pursue their activities together, just speaks to the fact that there's the power of this discourse that she's establishing, just like the power of the words that you're creating on the page, is something that has ultimately its own life and its own richness. And it can very much, I mean, you know, of course, any writer, I think, ultimately hopes for that, outlive the intent into a much richer territory after publication. I really love that image. I think it can be used very nicely with younger generations also to visualize the stark choices and impoverished landscape in which we lived at that point, but that could become a place where creativity happens, just as you were carving it out.
Thank you, Maria. You know, in fact, during the process of writing, I discovered something which is very familiar to the writers, but not to me since then, that the characters, they are doing what you are planning for them to do, but in fact, from one moment to another, you discover that you are just the hand who is writing what they want. And if you want to ask me what I am dreaming of, I am dreaming to the time when other characters of other stories will become totally autonomous from me. And I, you know, I will be their scribble lord, and nothing else. So it is a kind of state which is so specific for the writers. And I was so, you know, delighted to have it, to experience it. It was extraordinary.
Thanks for sharing this intimate relationship with your writing with us. I will turn to the panelists and ask, as I understand from Mihaela Campion, there are comments, but no questions. I don't know, Mihaela, if you would like to share those with us for those who are not, you know, watching us live, so that it might be recorded for the YouTube recording. What are your thoughts, Mihaela Campion?
Absolutely. Well, first I'd like to say that I feel really humbled by this conversation and your participation, and I feel honored to be part of an organization that promotes such extraordinary Romanian, you know, I don't know, I'm so emotional. You know, the Romanian representation here and there. I kind of see Mihaela and Maria being the two strong voices across the ocean, and being part of this and promoting you, it's really an honor and a pleasure for all of us at Archer. And we are looking forward to do this again on any topic that addresses social justice issues, human rights issues, because more than ever, this is needed again and again and again, which tells me one more time that history repeats itself. But let's turn to comments and questions here. We have a few questions. The comments are extraordinary, as I said, you know, like how special writer and human being Mihaela is, talking about her generosity and understanding, you know, this modesty that we've seen, you know, all the time coming from her in her writings, teachings, and philosophical comments. A lot of praising about, you know, how Maria is doing a great job moderating the conversation, great points coming from all of the panelists. And we also have a few questions, like, I'm going to start with the simple ones. Is this novel going to be translated in English? Does anybody know about that?
Sorry, I don't have an answer.
Oh. Well, maybe something to work on. Maybe a new project. But definitely it should be, because I think it will have a great interest. We also have a question from Laura Grunberg. How Mihaela, the feminist of today, relates to the unconsciousness feminist who wrote Cadmav. In finalizing the manuscript after 89, has Mihaela made some adjustments between the two?
No adjustments. My answer for Laura, who knows very well the book, in fact, she knew it since from the very beginning. She is a member of Cârmăr. So she also wrote for us at the time being. No, the only adjustment I made were related to the archaic words I used in the first version and nothing else. So the language was very difficult for the people who are living now, who are younger and so on, to be to understand, because I used in 80s different kind of words which were now with anymore. And this was the only modification apart from names. So I changed the names, but not the story, not at all, not the content, not the ideas. No,
can you give an example? Can you give an example of such a word? Because I know the fiction written by our colleagues you mentioned at the beginning, Mihaela. You mentioned the fact that you have been reading the books of prose published in the 80s by the young generation of those times. And I know their fiction very well, and it is not marked with old words, with archaic words. So can you just give an example of what kind of words have you expelled from the published version of the novel?
Some of them were regionalist, so it doesn't came anything in my mind right now. Sorry, Bogdan. I know I am disappointing you, but in fact, yes, I know that this is what I did to change the words, not their meaning, the words as, you know, from the way they were used at the time being in the way they are intelligible now, nothing else. Some of them were regionalism, it's true. So I am very in depth to my part of Transylvania, for example.
Mihaela, you did not answer Laura's question about how today's feminist reflects on the unconscious. I think it was the word feminist of the 1980s. I want to know too.
Mm-hmm. So I don't think that I understood very well the question.
Yeah.
So for sure, I was not at all an aware feminist when I wrote this novel. This is for sure. I was a very discontented woman because of the kind of Weltanschauung in terms of what a woman can do, can create, which are the limits of her creativity and freedom and so on. So yes, I was revolted. It's true. As she was, in fact. That means in this circle, everybody thought that it's unjust, but we had the concepts and the theories for this sort of injustice. They came in our life once we started to read feminist theories, feminist philosophy, feminist history, and so on. So in order to have a language for this protest, for this revolt, for this discontent, for this injustice, you have to have a culture of it. So this happened just after 92.
And we can read more about it in Cumintarea Mea de Femeie and many other writings that you've done.
Exactly.
Mihaela, are there any, Campion, are there other questions?
Yeah, we have another question here. If the book could be found here in the United States, is it available?
No, the answer is no, but it can be ordered to the publishing house. They can send it to the publishing house Rocard. There is the address of this publishing house, and it can be, people who are interested, they can buy it from the publishing house.
Okay, I will.
And there you have it, right here. I can put the URL in the chat, folks. Oh.
Okay, I will add this in the comments. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for the information. Another question is if we can have more events with Mihaela Miroiu in the future. You know, as representing Archer here today, and I hope Maria representing Indiana University, I'm going to say yes, of course. We will have Mihaela Miroiu back. Maybe we'll
and I'll be very glad to come back.
Yes, thank you so much. Maybe we'll make it like you know, like an hour annual you know, event to meet around this time every year, because last year it was in March and this year is in February, so we are on a continuum. So again, I would like to thank you all for being here with us today. Your presence speaks it all. There is no more, you know, praising for everything you do. It's shown in your work, in who you are, in what you promote. We are welcoming you back anytime. And for those who watched this event live today, please follow Archer for our next events, I would say, for the rest of the year, and for our contribution to promote social justice and human rights here in the United States, in the diaspora communities, and also everywhere where we have Romanian communities or immigrant communities as well. And thank you so much, everyone.
Can I say just 2 words?
Absolutely,
Mihaela?
please. Okay.
So first of all, I want to express my gratitude for all of you who made Cadmav possible. So I'm speaking now about my friends. I am speaking now about those who read it in the recent time, 2 years ago or something like that, as Lidia Boda or Odilia Rușianu, and they made a lot of wonderful suggestions in terms of corrections and so on. And for the readers, I express my gratitude for the readers who are giving it or him, Cadmav, yes, or her, a new life by taking this character as for themselves, as expressing themselves in their own way. So thank you to all of you. For me, it was an impressive evening, and maybe the only thing I want to do now is to see the others who are watching us and to give them my best regards and feelings, and to tell them that I am waiting to read their own books and stories. Thank you very much.
Thank you.